I remember, I think the first time I remember spending a lot of time with books is when I was very young. I had rheumatoid fever, which was joint pains. I could barely walk. And that's when I think Dad bought a set of Encyclopedia Britannica. And I was not really into reading books compared to my sisters. But when you're at home for 2 months in the bed and you have 20 books with a lot of pictures, then, you know, I started reading books, and I got, you know, it was something. Those days there was no TV, there was not even too many colored magazines. You couldn't see colored photos. So books was a great attraction, and that's when I discovered, when I had rheumatoid arthritis when I was 8 or 9 years old. But it also got me addicted to, you know, learning, using books as a medium, not just to acquire knowledge, but it's to trigger thoughts in myself. And so books was actually quite enjoyable even at that age because of that experience. Later, I think, you know, went to school, college, I used to read some James Hadley Chase, or what was the Western novel those days, Louis Armour. And those were the two big things. And but I never read any one of them continuously all through. Then James Hadley Chase used to be detective and pulp fiction, what they used to call. I had classmates who used to read every novel of theirs. They used to release once, like a movie almost. Once every 3-4 months, a new James Hadley Chase novel used to come, and they used to read every one of them. Then we had this cowboy, because we used to see cowboy movies and cowboy novels, Louis Armour, and I forgot the other one. They used to read each and every book of that, but I never used to read I never used to follow or track an author, because I think some of them it becomes stale, because after you read 3 books, the 4th book is exactly like the first 3 books. So I never really this thing. But then that age, I think 10th, 12th, I also started reading P.G. Wodehouse. But P.G. Wodehouse, I would try and read each and every book, because it was hilarious and his sense of humor was subtle, and I learnt a new language and I learnt a new way to express myself when I read that. So P.G. Wodehouse was great, and I suggest that those of you who like subtle humor, or even if you don't like subtle humor, I think one should develop that humor, and I suggest you to read P.G. Wodehouse novels. They are just hilarious. Yeah, and after that I started reading some of the more serious books. I was hooked on to Ayn Rand, and Ayn Rand had novels. She also had books on where she used to analyze logic itself. She used to analyze. She used to analyze spirituality, religion, all these things. But I didn't go there first. First I went and read her novels, and that really captivated me. She created this personality called Howard Rourke in her book Fountainhead, and that actually, to make me feel that what all I thought was actually right. That was the first book, because usually when you're growing up, the teacher tells you what you're doing wrong, your parents tell you what you're doing wrong, but this book made me realize whatever I did since childhood, I did the right thing, because that focused on this personality who always felt that one should go with his knowledge, intellect and his heart to wherever these 3 leads them, and nothing else. They don't need to follow any leader, any philosophy and things like that, and wherever their knowledge, their heart leads them to, they should follow. And this is about an architect who defied conventional principles and norms of architecture and built something entirely new, because that's what his ego, what he calls, led him to. And he also went on to explain how ego is very, very good, and it strengthens your inner self if you use it properly. So that is what captivated me, and then I started reading a lot of Ayn Rand books. And I definitely suggest that the best book, of course the other one is Atlas Shrugged, but I liked The Fountainhead. I suggest you read The Fountainhead. by Ayn Rand. I went to college. I went to Gindi Engineering College, and I had to, stay in the hostel, but I was not sure whether I'll get in the hostel. So I went 1 week early and stayed in my father's friend's house, my father's friend's elder brother's house in Madras, now called Chennai. He was a great fan of, he was a member of the Ramakrishna Mutt. He used to take me there. And the last thing any youngster would want to go, 18-year-old guy wants to go, is to Ramakrishna Mutt. He'd like to go to whatever the happening places. But I was his guest and he would take me. I couldn't refuse that. But I started reading Vivekananda's books, and spirituality was something which I was not so interested at that point. But somehow I picked 1 or 2 books. The English was simple. What is said was simple. The language was simple, but what he said was quite complex for my age to comprehend and understand. So I never really understood a lot of things what Vivekananda tried to convey. But that also was very good, because what was spirituality to me was a mystery, and the mystery got embedded in my brain, because something you don't understand, it'll stay in your brain and it always tickles you. Oh, what did he mean? And I recall a story about a bird sitting on top of a tree and another bird trying to reach there, and when the bird which finally reaches the other bird on the top, this bird realizes that he said something in that sentence. All of a sudden I realized I lost myself in me, and suddenly realized there were no 2 birds, there was only 1 bird. I never really understood, and that was a mystery. I remember every word, and even now I am not sure whether I really understood that. But that's what triggered me into, my quest for spirituality. And not that I am a very spiritual person, but that question stayed. What does it mean? When I reached the bird on the top, I was totally lost, and I could not find myself in me, and all of a sudden realized that there were no 2 birds at all. There was only 1 bird. So that was a mystery, and I could never figure that out, and probably I haven't figured it out now. But that was a question that was hanging in my mind, and I forgot about it and grew up. I read a lot of other books and things like that, but much later that led me to the books of Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev, and that gave a lot more clarity on spirituality, and I realized spirituality is not about some external gods, and it's about yourself. It's the most private thing. It's not something very public, and so that really gave me a new dimension, and I really suggest that you read the books of Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev, and it's not about gods, it's about yourself. College days I used to read I stopped reading these James Hadley Chase and things like that, what I was reading in 10th standard and 12th standard. But I did read one book again that left a lasting impression on me, that is Stone for Danny Fisher. And actually I forgot who the author was. Then I just Googled and found the author was Harold Robbins. I could not believe, because Harold Robbins is a classic pulp fiction author who put sufficient masala, sex, violence, everything into it. But in his early books, he wrote some of the classics, and that was a life story of one guy called Danny Fisher, who grew up from the slums, became a big tycoon, and then he dies because of his background in violence and things like that. And then he's writing his life story to his son who's not yet born. So that was something that was really nice. I loved that book. But there were other books too. In business, I started, as I grew older, I started reading lesser. In fact, there was a time I even stopped reading books because I had an accident, and I suddenly developed uneasiness in reading. In fact, I fractured my eye orbit. While I didn't have glasses, they had a problem, what they called was accommodation problem of the eye. So literally for a period of 5-10 years, I stopped reading books because it was very uncomfortable, only textbooks and things like that. Later, slowly, I got glasses and started reading again. But when I got into business, one or two business books I read was Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive by Harvey Mackay. And that was very practical, very simple, no theory, no knowledge, how to get down there, cut the competition, or when the competition is trying to cut you down, how to stay alive, survive without being eaten alive. I'm not from a business background, so some of this really helped me, and I think I suggest you read that. I read a lot of articles, books, magazines, seen a lot of PowerPoint presentations and about globalization and things like that. And one of the things that I was impressed is the world is flat, because I later on got into the IT business, technology, from engineering and electronics to the IT, and then we saw the whole change in the demographics of Hyderabad and Bangalore and Pune with these youngsters in the IT industry. I myself was heading one of the Wipro companies as the CEO and managing director, and the entire Indian urban landscape was changing because of this IT and BPO industry. And there used to be a term which was very popular then, saying a globalization. The need is there and it's serviced in India and things like that, and that's part of globalization. And then your competition is not your guy next door, your competition is someone in USA, and for the guy in USA, your competition is someone in India or Japan and things like that. And then with great insight, somebody wrote a book called The World is Flat, and I think I'm trying to get his name. He was the New York Times editor, Tom or Tim, and he had met Narayan Murthy, Nandan Nilekani, then a lot of Cisco head, Microsoft head, and he was trying to figure out how the world is levelizing, or world is becoming flatter and flatter. And so very wealthy companies sitting on huge opportunities, and companies here with no opportunities. The world was becoming flatter. Opportunities in other countries are available here, and opportunities here are available there. So I read many, including Thomas Friedman's World is Flat and various other modern business and economists and some of the political books and things like that. But what really shook me was, I thought these are new thoughts, new ideas of the new era. Then when I read Adam Smith, his series, and Adam Smith is an economist of the 17th century, and he wrote things about free market, what Thomas Friedman was writing in The World is Flat. He was a 17th century economist who knew that's how is the most efficient market, the free markets, opportunities, globalization. He wrote about all these. So he invented a new term called the invisible hand. I mean, it's something like God, something controls the market, and that is that invisible hand, and that's that free market. And I realized all these new age authors actually derived all the basic fundamental concept from this, from Adam Smith. And Adam Smith was a 17th century economist from Scotland, not even London or England. So these are some of the books that really made huge impressions on me. But most of all, I think the idea of anything, a person or a book, whatever influences you, it doesn't mean you follow them. It should leave a question within you. It should leave something unanswered. It should trigger you into a quest, and that is what a good book does. And that's what a good person or a good leader who influences you does. And lastly, after joining politics, you know, we all have opinions about so many things, and some of us are change our opinions and things like that. I had opinions on gundas, I had opinions on old city gundas, and they are all violent crooks who can be paid to murder or kill and things like that. Then I met one gentleman, his name is Sheikh Saleh, And later, and he was part of the Telangana agitation, and later I came to know that he had few police cases. Much later I came to know he was very warm person. He used to participate in the agitation. He's from the old city, and it's not just 1 or 2 police cases. He was there was a rowdy sheet opened against him in the police, and he actually stabbed and slashed someone in the past. That I came to know only 3 or 4 years after I knew him. And then one day he told, Sab, I have all these backgrounds, rowdy background, but I was brought up in this environment. I was forced, I was led, I was coerced into doing that. I did that. And but now, you know, I wasted so much of my life. I spent almost 8-9 years in jail. I ruined my life, and now I repent that I was in bad company and things like that. And now I want to, you know, I have causes, sir. I have children to work for. I have causes to fight for. And he was passionate about whatever he believed in, although one would not imagine his old city, Gunda. And then one day he came and said, sir, and I didn't have the opportunity to read, sir. Please come to my house and this thing, I'll show you. My father was a great man. He didn't give me anything but these books. And I went to his small house in Old City. It's full of books. And he told, till I was 30, I never read one book, sir. And now I started reading books. And not only that, I started writing books. And I thought nothing else except to write about my own experience and what people should not do. So he wrote one book called Gundaism and Political Gundaism, in Urdu first and then translated to Telugu. Then he wanted to translate it to English. I can't read Urdu. My Telugu is very slow. So anyway, the English translated book. And I think that the very first, the very first chapter, the very first sentence I started reading, I read many great authors. I saw something very different about this. The greatest of the greatest authors didn't startle me or made me open my eyes so wide. He starts the book saying, we make some mistakes in our childhood and we may repeat them, but now I am 45 years old. I realized that even today I am making mistakes, and we all make mistakes, and we keep repeating those mistakes again and again and again throughout our life, and that is what we need to escape. And usually, you know, authors write about changes, how a great guy became a horrible guy, how a nobody became a big tycoon, or how a bad guy became a good guy. But this guy says, whatever mistakes you do, you keep repeating them throughout your life. And I saw some great truth and honesty in that. And when I looked at myself, I've been making some mistakes, and I realized I'm continuing making the mistakes again, the same mistakes again and again and again. And I realized it takes a lot of effort to get out of this cycle. Of course, I didn't murder anyone or kill anyone or things like that. But there's some great truth in some of the simple people who write great books. And I'm waiting for, this book is not published, I'm waiting for Sheikh Salah's book to be published in English.